Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Really appreciate it. We can go ahead and get started. Oh, going too fast. Like any good presentation, we do start off with memes. So just to set the stage, we're going to be talking about how to leverage, how teams are leveraging LLMs to accelerate go-to-market. And maybe this image resonates with some folks where there's been this explosion of generative AI in the last year, and people are trying to figure out exactly how they should adjust their business or how they should be changing their operations to leverage these latest tools. But for folks that have tried them, maybe they've fallen a little bit short of expectations. Kind of the expectations in the news are, this is going to be Terminator style, going to solve all of your problems, but when you go to deploy them in real life, potentially they fall short. That being said, there are some applications where they really are shining today, and people have really improved their efficiency and gotten a lot of value out of these tools. So we're going to talk about both today. We're going to talk about the applications that might be a little bit early, and then some of the ones that are really effective. Before we dive in, just quickly about Redpoint. Redpoint is a multi-stage fund. We invest from seed to Series C. We've been super fortunate over the last 20 plus years to invest in some incredible SaaS companies, in companies like Stripe, Twilio, Snowflake, HashiCorp, and many others that are also in kind of the sales go-to-market stack, like Adeo, Qualified, and beyond. So that's a bit about Redpoint. About me, my name is Patrick Chase. I'm a partner at Redpoint. I focus on SaaS and infrastructure. And before Redpoint, I was a machine learning engineer. I worked on feed and search at LinkedIn. I sometimes say I used to write code. I now write emails. And yeah, that's a bit about me. Urvashi, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name's Urvashi. I'm a principal at Redpoint Ventures, also part of the early stage team. And as Pat said, we invest at the seed and Series A. My background before coming to Redpoint was I used to work with Fortune 500 companies on M&A, growth, product, pricing at BCG. And now I have the pleasure of working with Pat and all of our incredible portfolio companies.
Awesome. So this may not come to a shock as a shock to anyone in this room, but go-to-market has come under a lot of pressure over the last year. This shows kind of net new ARR added per quarter, excluding the hyperscalers. And you can see that over the last 2 quarters, it's down a lot. So go-to-market is definitely feeling the pain of budget cuts and consolidation. The flip side is there's been huge advancements in AI. Google came out with the Attention is All You Need, the Transformer paper. And since then, there's been this eruption of AI R&D. So you can see kind of papers published per month going through the roof. But it's not just R&D. There's also some applications that are scaling really, really quickly and faster potentially than we've ever seen. So this shows the time to reach 100 million users. It took ChatGPT only 2 months, and you can see kind of some other notable consumer companies there and how quickly they reached it. But really impressive kind of the scale and how quickly it's taken the world by storm.
So at Redpoint, we're very interested in investing in the application layer of AI. So we've looked across the board on how LLMs are actually being used in production and in workflows. And across the board, one of the things that struck us is that go-to-market has come out as one of the most promising use cases for AI. Granted, everything that we're seeing in AI today is very, very early. So there's a lot of experimentation. Companies are spending money, and they're trying to find what is kind of the efficient frontier and what will actually stick. We don't know that yet. It's too early. But what's going on in go-to-market, I think, can't be ignored. And just to point to some data points here, so this is a survey on the right. The graph that you see is a survey that Bain did. They surveyed about 570 people that work in large enterprises on potential applications of LLMs. And you can see it cuts. The yellow is applying LLMs to product, and green is applying LLMs to workflows. And the interesting thing is, on the green, the first couple of bars that you see are all around go-to-market. It's customer success, it's marketing, it's sales, productivity. So go-to-market is one of those areas where we are seeing incredible promise. And with that in mind, we went out and we polled a bunch of our portfolio companies, as well as companies outside the portfolio. We spoke to sales leaders, marketing leaders, and customer support leaders and asked them, is this real or is it hype? And so we want to share the learnings of that with you. So we're going to categorize the innovation that we're seeing in go-to-market in 3 buckets today. I see a lot of you taking screenshots. Please do that. If you are looking to get started with LLMs and AI, these companies that we put on the map are a great place to start. And the thing is, it's not even exhaustive. There are so many more. We're happy to tell you about more companies too. But generally, we bucket it into marketing, sales, and customer support. I'm going to talk about some of these companies a little bit more, but there are kind of 3 takeaways from looking at this slide. The first is that if you are a sales, marketing, or customer support leader, there is a lot of help coming your way. So we've spoken with teams who've said that they've had productivity gains of maybe 10, 20% from adding these tools into their workflow. The second thing is you see ChatGPT, and that's probably the most famous tool out there. It's in all of the buckets here. ChatGPT is the most general purpose LLM tool. And we've seen a lot of companies that are doing prompt engineering using ChatGPT and applying that to their individual use cases. But beyond that, there's a lot of these other newer startups. Some of the names might be familiar to you, but I'm guessing some of them are not, because most of them are Series A seed stage companies. Some are a bit later, but they're applying LLMs to a very specific problem. So you don't even need to do any of that prompt engineering. You can just use one of these tools, enter in your particular use case, and start to get results right away. The last thing I'll say is that all of these companies are very, very early, and innovation is happening very quickly. So maybe today they're 20% good, but tomorrow they're going to get a lot better. So it's a great time to start experimenting with some of these tools. A couple to call out here. So ChatGPT, I won't go into details. Stability is another one that you've probably heard of. Durable is a company that will help you generate a website in 2 minutes from just a very simple prompt. CoFrame is a company that helps you do A/B testing on your website. Tofu is a company that will help you generate very personalized marketing campaigns for a particular purpose. Jasper, Copy AI, Writer are all companies that do copywriting. And so you give it a prompt and it'll generate a blog post, any kind of copy marketing for you. On the sales side, Lavender is a company that will help you write sales outreach emails. Tavis and Synthesia are companies that will help you create very personalized videos for a specific use case. So if you're trying to create a customer support video, or you're trying to create a sales demo, you can do it just once, and it'll personalize it to the particular audience that you're going after. Tome will helps make storytelling a lot better. So there are a lot of these companies. I encourage everyone to go look them up, and we'll post these slides later too. The first use case we want to dive deeper into is marketing. And there are kind of 3 applications of it that rose to the surface for us. The first is around content creation. And when you think about LLMs, this is kind of what they were made for, is creating content. And in content creation, we've seen marketers use it to generate industry reports, blog posts, webinars, you name it. The thing to watch out for here is if you're looking for an LLM to write innovative or new ideas for you, you're going to be disappointed. What it's very good at is taking a very, very detailed prompt, and it's helpful to constrain the prompt as much as you can, because you must have heard about hallucinations. That's the other big problem with LLMs, is they tend to make stuff up and they sound very confident doing it. So what you need to do is be very, very specific in terms of who the audience is for that particular article, what you're looking to get out of it. And if you do that, then you'll get better results. The other thing that came to the surface was SEO. So this is probably self-explanatory, but AI is very good at writing SEO, content for SEO. And one of the interesting things that we've seen here is, now that AI has lowered the barriers for content creation, you can have a lot of dynamic testing on SEO. So CoFrame is a company that I mentioned earlier. They're continuously A/B testing the copy on your website to see what's working and adjusting it on the fly. So if previously you could only experiment with 2 or 3 versions of the website, now you can continuously experiment because AI is doing that in the background for you, and it's applying a very data-driven approach to it. The last thing I want to talk about is personalization. This was really crystallized. I mean, one leader I spoke with, he said, earlier we might create a case study or we might create an outreach email for our large customers or large prospects that we're going after, or we might create one for each industry that we're going after. With AI, you can literally create thousands of versions of the same thing. So there's no reason why each customer that you're going after or each prospect that you're going after can't have their very own targeted, personalized journey with you. And AI can help you get there.
The second vertical that we looked at use cases for was sales. And there's really some amazing use cases here, and I think a few that are worth paying attention to. When we talk to people in our portfolio and outside the portfolio, they're like, hey, can you be as specific as possible when understanding how people are leveraging ChatGPT? So in each of these, we put the example prompt that people are using in production today. You guys can go back and try it on your own and see what it generates. But the first use case was outbound emails. And so you can see the example prompt here is, here's who we are. This is what our company does. This is a target account in industry XYZ. How could my technology benefit them? Please organize into 3 bullet points. So that was a prompt that an SDR was using for generating outbound emails tailored to their prospect. This VP of sales that we talked to said that they got a 50% increase in productivity by leveraging ChatGPT and these types of tools for their SDR team. And one thing that was really interesting was they believe that it's kind of a short-term advantage and that this advantage may only last for a year or two. And so he was really investing in kind of optimizing these workflows now because he thinks once people are more used to receiving this type of content or have a bunch of AI-generated content in their inbox, then it may have not the ROI that it does now. So he's like, the time is now, and we want to build our team, teach them how to use these tools and get them to max productivity as fast as possible. So that's the first use case, outbound emails. The second one is for competitive research. This one is pretty interesting. I don't know if folks, one thing that we would do a lot as VCs is just to get a list of competitors is go to Google and say, company X versus, and then you can look at the autocomplete and it will show you all of the things that people are comparing to companies. This is kind of the next generation version of that, where people will prompt ChatGPT with, can you compare our features versus competitor 1, competitor 2, competitor 3, and put the information into a table, and it will spit it out. It's not perfect, but it is quite good. So one company was using this for a 360-degree view of kind of them and their competitors and how they stack up there. The third use case was for case studies. So they were using ChatGPT to help generate the slides for their case studies. So they would say, here is the first 3 slides that we have. Can you generate the titles for slides 3, 4, 5, and 6? And we want to cover these three things and then generate the bullets for those slides as well. So they would be kind of personalized to the company. And again, it's not perfect, but a good place to start. And I think that's kind of a theme that was emerging. There's a quote here that says, for our stage of company, this is a Series A sales leader, I'm comfortable being directionally accurate. If 90% of the time they're accurate, I'm fine with that. The risk is low. Worst case is someone doesn't respond, and that is okay. And so I think for all of these, it's kind of low stakes use cases, but there is a lot of value that people are getting from it.
There's 2 more things I'll add on the sales front. So in outbound emails, one of the other use cases we saw is for sales coaching. So what a tool like Lavender, for instance, lets you do is it takes your best rep and takes the learnings from your best rep and allows you to apply it to the rest of the organization. So you can codify, you can go back and study what's been working for the best reps who are closing deals. You can codify some of that, and you can make that part of the prompts that you enter into Lavender and have all your other SDRs follow the same strategy. So that's the one thing. The other thing that came across, and this is kind of a less obvious use case, but it's around Salesforce productivity. So I spoke with a sales leader who highlighted a couple of interesting use cases as well. One of the things was around just using AI for very simple use case, which is summarizing a meeting. and taking the transcript from a meeting and generating the action items and meeting notes from that. It's a very simple use case. It's something that AI is very good at, and it actually saves you 10, 15 minutes of time. So that was one very simple one. The other thing that he highlighted is how AI can actually help you become more data-driven in your organization. So this person, sales leader at a Series A company, had written custom scripts using ChatGPT to take a call transcript, say from Gong or something else, and extract some data points from it. So for instance, he wanted to measure call quality. Call quality for him was whether the salesperson mentioned next steps at the end of the email. Did there was some nuance in the pricing which tend to trip up customers for that particular company? Did they mention the nuance in that pricing? And he codified all of these things and kind of entered that data into Salesforce so that later on he could pull a report to say what was call quality across XYZ calls. For the calls that didn't have high call quality, should there be a follow-up? So these are ways in which it's a very simple task, but you're not going to ask your salesperson to enter all of this data after a call. It's too tedious. But these are things, especially when you constrain AI to such a specific use case, it ends up being very good at it. So we're still seeing tools evolve to do some of these things. A lot of this is very custom work, and people are just being creative right now. But productivity is a big gain that we're seeing from the companies we spoke with.
The last vertical that we looked at was customer support, and I think the key use case here is really kind of this co-pilot for support. People that are using ChatGPT or different LLMs to generate potential answers for their support agents. And this was a really, really high ROI use case that emerged if people have this kind of chat style support within their business. So kind of two of the folks that we talked to, one said, with AI copilots, we observed that each agent got 10x faster. With the copilot, that reflects in the cost savings as well. That's kind of one company. And another example was they had actually, since their agents were able to be more productive, they had reduced the size of their customer support team by half. So both of those kind of seeing really impressive improvements in their efficiency. And their workflow, what they had done is they had integrated ChatGPT or GPT-3 into the agent's workflow. So it would generate the first response, and then agents would be looking at it before kind of clicking send. And the second use case that we
one of the things I'll add on the customer support one too is I like this use case because it's possible to be very data-driven with this use case too. When we spoke with a couple of leaders, especially for companies that are a bit more technically sophisticated, what they've started to do is measure what percentage of the time does the suggested answer from ChatGPT become the default answer. You can measure improvements in that percentage over time, and when you see it getting to a point where you're comfortable, you can then think about maybe should we deploy LLM-based customer support directly with our customers, at least for a very small and simple use case, or very, very like frequently asked questions, potentially.
Yeah, that's a great point. The second use case was around documentation Q&A. So being able to kind of chat with the documents or have an interactive FAQ. This one's super popular, especially with dev tool companies. Because many of them have developers asking questions of their documentation, so they've deployed LLMs on top of them so they can kind of summarize what is in the documentation and get them answers as quickly as possible. And then the third use case is call center agents. So they answer a bunch of questions, and so there are companies that are deploying AI as part of their workflow to get them, basically allow them to answer these questions more accurately and faster. Yeah. And then in terms of learnings, so we talked to over 10 go-to-market leaders, and so we summarized them into some learnings here. I think the first really is to have a human in the loop. This came up in almost everyone that we talked to. LLMs work best when they're kind of human and machine. It's best when a human is clicking the send button or proofreading what they've done, or kind of working together with the AI versus just doing it all on their own. The second is content generation, and drafting cold emails really is the bread and butter of these tools right now. it's a great low-stakes way to start and get these into production before testing out kind of higher-stakes use cases. And then the third thing is it definitely will take some time to see results. They are not as turnkey, I think, as sometimes they appear on Twitter or in the news. They do take some time to figure out exactly the right prompt and how you can get what you need out of the algorithm. You kind of need to tell it what you want. So those are kind of the first three takeaways, and then these are a few more.
Yeah, a couple more. So I think I said this before, but the interesting thing is you don't need to be a technical person to start to get value out of AI. What we've seen with the number of companies that have been building in the space is it's very easy to get going, and the companies we pointed to are a great start, but you should experiment with these tools because it won't take you more than half an hour to get set up and see to start to get results. The second thing I want to say is that AI is not a replacement for strategy. It's very, very similar to having an intern or a junior employee on your team who needs a lot of direction. And in some ways, it can be clarifying for your strategy because to get the best results out of LLMs, you have to be very clear on what you're looking for, who the audience is, what your purpose is. And so in some ways, it can be clarifying. And then the last thing I want to say is that it's very early. So as we said, we spoke to about 12 go-to-market leaders, and I would say it was split about half and half in terms of people that are experimenting with it and getting use out of it versus people that have tried it a little bit, hasn't worked for them, and they are skeptical. What we've seen across the board, though, is people agree that there is a lot of potential here, and the ones that are trying out these tools are doing it with the recognition that it's going to get better, and they want to set a foundation for when these tools do get there, they'll be able to take advantage of it and take advantage of that short-term arbitrage that Pat talked about earlier, where these tools aren't out there in the public yet, and if you're the first to use them, even if they're not perfect, you can get that bit of an edge.
So just to wrap up, if you remember one thing from this presentation, I think this photo is a good one. I think we're at the Iron Man stage of these models versus Terminator. If you think of Iron Man, it's kind of human and machine working together to create superhuman powers. I think that is much more of where the algorithms are versus Terminator, do everything on your own. So I think we might get to Terminator sometime in the future, but for now we're kind of at the Iron Man stage of deploying LLMs. So we'll close with that and open it up for questions if there are any.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, would you mind going to the microphone? It looks like some people cut you in line now, so.
Yeah, thank you both for the presentation. I was wondering, as it relates to AI apps, how you think about defensibility as investors.
Do you want to take it or do you want me to start?
Yeah.
I think it's a really good question, right? I think especially at the app layer, it's something that we think about a lot. At least the way that I think about it, I think AI will be an important part of kind of the long-term moat of the companies, but you want to believe that a company might be 90% application, 10% model. And so one example of that is like the company Descript, right? They're using, it's basically AI generated, or AI to edit and generate videos. And so there's a tremendous amount of workflow there that goes beyond just the model. And so there's kind of the model, they're doing amazing things in the AI world, but they also have built this app that's super, super hard to build. So it's nothing like a thin wrapper around GPT, which I think is something that goes around on Twitter a lot, but really is like a very durable, hard application to build in absence of AI. I think about it a little bit like a database, right? Like people will build these apps on top of databases. Whether they're built on top of database X versus database Y doesn't necessarily lead to the differentiation. I think AI will be similar in a lot of ways. Yeah. I don't know if you have more to add.
I mean, the only other thing I'd add is I think it's not different from moats and defensibility in regular applications, which over time you build distribution, you build a brand, and that's how you build a moat. I think AI has been really good at solving very specific problems like we talked about earlier, and it helps you get your foot in the door, but that's not enough. So there's a lot of curiosity and there's a lot of budgets for these things, but you have to capitalize on that to then build a very deep product and brand and distribution in that space.
Thank you both.
Thanks, guys. My question was very similar around building a moat, but more specifically, what's your viewpoint? You showcased individual use cases in companies that are focused on marketing or sales or customer support. What about approaching it from a workflow problem like productivity across the horizontal, a knowledge worker as an example? Is your viewpoint on that that it's too wide, or leveraging the global LLMs like Google Palm or ChatGPT and creating a workflow that improves productivity? Is that also a great approach to take?
Yeah.
Start?
So we found that the best tools so far are ones that are pointed at very specific use cases. I'm not sure that makes for a great company, but as practitioners, I think you should be taking advantage of that. One of the areas that I'm very bullish on in terms of broad enterprise applicability is LLMs as the next generation of RPA. So RPA, or robotic process automation, the things that UiPath or Automation Anywhere started, tends to be, when you look at it in today's world, it doesn't make sense as that being the way that we automate things. It tends to be very brittle. It's pixel-based. It's very expensive to implement. Takes about 6 months to even identify a use case, implement it, and then you have to have this team of consultants or RPA developers that have to be on board to help you maintain those automations that you created. What AI has done is it makes it very simple to observe someone doing something once. So you could be a call center employee transferring data from an email and entering into one system, or you could be a salesperson entering some data into Salesforce. These are all little tasks that take up so much time when you add it all up. RPA was the way that people were solving this in the past, but it's kind of fallen short. And with LLMs, I think we have a way of doing it much more quickly, in a way that doesn't require maintenance, and potentially a way that actually makes RPA accessible to a lot of companies and to a lot of mid-market companies, because traditionally it's been so expensive that it's been relegated to larger companies. So that's one application of LLMs, kind of horizontal application of LLMs that I'm really excited about.
Maybe just one thing to add. I think an interesting question, and one that we ask ourselves a lot, is does AI fundamentally change the workflow in that specific kind of industry or vertical? And so if I think about writing code, I think it will, right? Like GitHub, I think Copilot is now 40% or more of the code that's shipped is generated by AI. And so I think that's one where it will. I think in video editing or something like that, it will also be, the workflow will completely change. Something like with Google Docs or Notion, I don't know that it will change as much. Like they've already started to integrate AI into the product, and it works pretty well, right? You can say like, hey, generate me a blog post, and it kind of is, you can write with it without the UI or the workflow changing that much. I think when the workflow changes, then there's more of an opportunity for a startup to emerge. And in absence of that, I think we've seen incumbents already move really quickly to generate a lot of this and put it into their product. So we kind of look for where the workflow is substantially changing, and then the verticals that are big enough to kind of support a large venture scale company.
Thank you.
Well, I think it dovetails off that one pretty good. But I noticed when you were talking about sales tools, you didn't really address CRMs, which are traditionally extremely expensive and very difficult for startups. Even if you're coming in and you're going to have 5 people using it,
Totally.
It's still incredibly pricey. And opportunity tracking, as it has to do with AI, most of your big dogs, if you're buying at a level that a startup can afford, it's really difficult to customize workflow. Pursuing venture capital is a great example of one that is not a customized workflow in almost anything. I'm just interested to know if you found some tools, or you see how AI can positively impact that god-awful problem. Are there any salespeople here? It's a terrible problem.
I love this question, and I know we weren't supposed to advertise companies too much.
Go ahead.
You can check out a company called Addio. We're super fortunate to be investors. It's attio.com. They're building a next-gen CRM that is leveraging kind of their collaborative and AI native and building a lot of this into their product, specifically targeted at early-stage companies and startups. And have that built into their pricing model and everything else about how they think about the world. So I would encourage you to check that out. They're doing some really cool things in the AI CRM space. We're really fortunate to be investors. We led their Series A. So as
Awesome.
far as tools go, we're biased, but I think that's a very cool one.
That's okay. I'll accept bias over 24 grand a month
Yeah.
anytime. So
The other, this is not the question you asked, but we have seen, tools that are building on top of CRMs. They're not as Adio is building a CRM, but we've seen tools that make it easy. Some of that data entry and the tedious work you're talking about, make it easy to do that. So Momentum is one that came up in some of the calls we did. Scratchpad is another one. Dooley is one. These are not AI native. I think Momentum is more AI native, but there are tools that are kind of taking away, because I mean, we've heard this everywhere. People don't like doing data entry into Salesforce, but there are companies that are building that layer on top of Salesforce as a productivity tool.
cool. I like this. I wasn't there to write them down. If anybody wrote those down, hit me up after this. But can I double dip one question? You spoke earlier about the sales coaching, which I think is an awesome idea. Do any of these, maybe even Adio, do cadence optimization, kind of like A/B testing, if you will, to see how certain cadences are working with certain people? Our number one salesperson in my last company, nobody could duplicate that because she was who she was. You know what I mean? She just woke up and was successful every day. But the people that were cadencing for new business development would love to have a way to actually analyze what was working for them and not. And I honestly did not find SalesLoft and Salesforce. Sorry, I love Salesforce, but it didn't really do a great job of doing that for me with my last team.
In terms of like cadence of outreach or like how you're
Right.
like,
So you know
running
you got
is like
your do
1,
this,
2,
do this,
yeah.
call twice a day, la 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 la. But looking at what's working for not just content, but steps that people are taking that it's generating. Is anything doing a good job of analyzing and improving that yet?
I feel like there are a lot of tools that are helping. It's still kind of user-defined workflows, and then it's up to the user to define, what this should look like, and then kind of have their own analysis and figure it out on their own. I think it's still kind of the next generation of tools that will get us to like, hey, maybe I'm starting with a prompt and I say like, I want to reach this type of customer, and then they go design a workflow to do it and test it over time. I think that's probably coming, but not here yet.
Yeah, I mean, the two things I'd say. One is that we talked about productivity, right? If you are using these tools right, you should be 20% more productive. So hopefully that allows you to, reach out to 20% more people or be a little bit more deliberate in your outreach because it's doing the basic work for you. That's what AI is really good at. It's not perfect, but at least it gets you 20% of the way there. The second thing I'll say is we did talk to companies. There are no off-the-shelf tools, but very sophisticated and larger, almost enterprise-level companies that are using LLMs to analyze, look across all of their customer data and see what was the last time I reached out to this customer, where are they in the customer journey, and then figure out what kind of outreach should I hit them. Maybe they haven't tested this. This is where they are in the journey. We haven't had a touch point with them in 2 weeks. So let's send an email that says, hey, check out this feature, or have you seen this? So we have seen companies that are using AI to be a lot more data-driven in terms of when to reach out, what to say when they do reach out, but I haven't seen an off-the-shelf tool that does that. It's a bit more sophisticated companies we've seen like cobbling together tools to do that.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hey, how are you? I got a little bit late, so I don't know if you already said this, but you are VC. What percentage are you like estimating that it's going to be for AI, I don't know, in the next 2 years, 3 years? Do you think it's going to be 80%, 70%, or are you still open to looking for opportunities that are not entirely AI, or your VC is 100% focused in AI right now? Thank you.
Do you want to start or do you want me to start?
You.
I think that, especially right now, over the last 6 months, we've seen a lot of pitches that have AI in some form. I think that will be less of a cornerstone, probably starting next year, will be less of a cornerstone of some of these pitches of like, hey, we're applying AI to X, and it will be more expected of that, companies are going to leverage AI where it makes sense, and then they're not going to where it doesn't make sense. And so I think it will be a tool that pretty much every company uses for either operations or as a part of their product, but I don't know that there'll be as many kind of AI native X as we're seeing now. Like I think that has been either infrastructure or apps for AI have been a lot of the investment this year. I think we'll probably see that go down next year, but it will be something that is, just part of companies as they're built and part of their stack.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. We've also talked about AI as kind of similar to the platform shift you saw with mobile. So initially, there are two things there. Initially, you might have seen mobile-specific companies, but now every company has a mobile version, and it's not a talking point anymore. So to Pat's point, it just becomes kind of the underlying infrastructure for a lot of features that we'll see. It's not going to center on AI. It's going to be more about what value are you bringing to your customer. The second thing I'll say is, I think I
have one other point. If you,
yeah, go ahead.
Happens.
The one thing that I would add is, since Urvashi was kind of comparing it to mobile, I think an interesting thought exercise is to compare the AI to kind of the shift to the cloud. And we're at SaaStr. There's probably clouds behind us. Okay, there aren't, but there's clouds around here a lot. And that created this huge wave of startups because it was hard for incumbents to re-architect their app to be cloud native. I think what we're seeing with AI is it's actually much easier for incumbents to re-architect their app to include AI. And we've seen this with Canva, with Notion, with Adobe, all really, really quickly shipping amazing AI features. And so the question that we're always asking ourselves is like, okay, if incumbents can move fast, then where are there opportunities for startups? And I don't know, we're kind of looking for those areas where there might be opportunity even with incumbents that move very quickly to add this functionality.
Yeah, actually, I remember the point I was going to say. So back to the point on mobile, the biggest companies that took advantage of mobile didn't come right when mobile came about. Like if you think about Ubers, the DoorDashes of the world, they came many years later. So I think a lot of the interesting innovation and like what AI will enable is still ahead of us. It might not even be this year. It might not even be next year. It might be in 3 years, 5 years. We're still there's a frenzy of activity right now and funding trying to figure out where we can use this and how we can use this. But I think we're very much at the tip of the iceberg right now.
So you as a VC are open to investing in other opportunities as well, right?
Yeah.
Yes,
Right.
for sure. We're definitely I would say AI has been a huge focus for us and will be going forward, but we invest across consumer and enterprise and things that are, AI or not.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
How's it going? I'm a former BDR and an AE, and I'm looking at a lot of these AI point solutions for my old workflows. And if I wanted a point solution for all the different workflows I had as a BDR and AE, I would need 20 AI tools. So as a VC, like when you're looking at these point solutions, how niche is too niche, and what is the right level of specificity for a startup?
Yeah, ideally, we want companies, if you think about it, our lens as a VC, we're looking for companies that can be multi-billion-dollar outcomes, right? To get to a multi-billion-dollar outcome, you need to get to at least 200 to 300 million in revenue. We need to believe that there's something big there. There has to be a moat there. So this is the first wave of companies. A lot of them are starting out solving very specific problems, and I agree with you, it might look like point solutions. We're ultimately looking to invest in things that can be much larger than that. So definitely looking for something much deeper. But that's how you cobble together. You cobble together, you do one thing, you do it really well, you become known for that, and then you start solving other problems with that same customer. So that's how it starts.
I also think as the ecosystem matures, you're going to need fewer and fewer tools. Because I think today you need 20, but then over time, some of them may add the functionality that you need, or they may add, email generation into something. And so I think over time, hopefully this would lead to a better experience. We're going to see kind of fewer tools that do some things really, really well. So that's kind of, I think it's TBD, but it's still quite early. And right now there's a lot, and I think in the future, there's going to be more integration and kind of more of this AI built into the products.
Cool, thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining. Really appreciate you taking the time, and we'll close there.
Thank you so much.